Thanks, Rob. Yes, my name is Maciek. You don't need to remember my last name because there are very few of us around. Funny story, my best friend's name is Maciek and Maciek K. In fact, it's Kowalik, so K-O. So there are two Macieks that are kind of joined together. So it's a weird situation. It's a Polish name, whatever, it's fine. I'm a software quality architect at Amrock. I'll tell you a little bit about our company and where we hail from and stuff like that as we get in. But what I want to talk to you guys about today is the need for speed. So you'll notice a lot of aviation theming throughout this presentation, and that's because I'm not a big aviation geek, but I do love the movie Top Gun. Has anybody seen Top Gun? Has anybody not seen Top Gun? Okay, Top Gun is a movie about planes with Tom Cruise and love and motorcycles and plane fights, dog fights. So it's cool. See it? There's a sequel. There's a sequel coming. I've seen the F-14 Tomcat come back. Anyway, so yes, aviation theming, lots of fun stuff. But the presentation really tries to hit on enabling test automation for your team, right? So that's basically what I'm going to be talking to you about. And I'm going to be sharing with you the story of how my team was able to do this. So it's not really a technical talk. You're not going to see much code at all, actually no code whatsoever, which is good and bad. But you are going to hear a lot of our personal story. Right? And the lessons that we learned, how we discovered the problems we were having, how we were doing things like breaking bottlenecks, and the results in our current situation. So that's basically what we're going to be talking about. But a little bit more about me. I like to brag about myself and my family specifically. So I am married, and I do have a daughter that's inside of my wife's belly there at that time. She's very cute. And I'm also a sailor. You see this picture of us on a boat. I hail from Windsor, Ontario. So I used to live in Breslau. Here, right? Yeah. Anybody live in Breslau? No? Anybody? No? Okay, cool. That's fine. It's a little off the beaten path. It's getting bigger, apparently. I don't know. I haven't been there for 5 years. Anyway, so I used to work in Kitchener, Waterloo area at McAfee. That's kind of how I discovered KWSQA. And then I moved to Windsor, and that's where I live currently with my daughter. See, look, she's real. It wasn't just a pregnancy picture. So that's my daughter. She's a little bit older now. That's my wife. And the reason I show these pictures is not to show off, beautiful women and cute babies. See, is this being recorded? Can I show this later? Yes. But basically because I like to stress that, outside of work, there is other things, right? And you guys are really engaged in the community and in the quality mindset, right? Because you're here, that's evidence of that. And that's great. But you also need, to spend time with your family and stuff, and you need to balance it out. Additionally, as you grow in your career, I think it's very important to give back, right? And that's this is my way of giving back. I've been doing this for maybe 10 plus years, close to 15 years now. Wow, I'm getting old. And I found that as I grew in my career, the one thing that I could give back was any type of lessons learned and sharing. It's scary at the beginning if you haven't done it before, right? But people don't chastise you because you trip up when you're presenting, right? In fact, they like that. So this is a great opportunity, right? I was talking to Sabina, the conference is coming up, right? Submit some idea that you have or submit some lesson that your team has learned, and everybody will benefit from it, right? So that's what I like to do. This is a picture of me at Quicken Loans Technology Conference last year, the year before, and then I'm here. I do have to give a little bit of a plug about Amrock because it's in our culture to share, and they allowed me to kind of do this presentation and kind of develop it on work time, which is really neat. So we're a title insurance valuations and settlement services company, right? And that sounds kind of boring. And if this wasn't being recorded, I'd tell you that it is. But because it is being recorded, I'm going to say it's a really interesting industry. But what we do, we operate out of Detroit, Michigan, and what we do is focus on the back end of a mortgage process, right? So if you're buying a house, you go to a financial institution in the States and say, hey, give me money for my house. And they say, okay, here's the money, but we have to do some checks on the property that you're buying and who's selling it to make sure that they are who they say they are. The property doesn't have any other loans against it. Nobody's going to come in and say, hey, I own a piece of the land after you buy the property. And that's the background searching that we do. So our technology team develops internally facing products and externally facing endpoints into our internally facing products for partners and consumers. So that's kind of what we do. This is a picture of downtown Detroit. So Detroit is not a dead city. I do want to plug that as well, right? We were just talking about coordinating with Lansing area testers. Guess what? Detroit's right in the middle. It's a really cool place to be. I've been there for about 5 years, like I said, and the city's really thriving. There's a lot of tech companies that have moved down there. So if you like any type of sport, so whether it be hockey or baseball or basketball, all the major teams are down there now, and the city's really expanding and reinvigorating itself. So it's no longer broke or really unsafe downtown. So anyway. Our tech team, what we do, we focus on the title process, but at our core, we're really a tech company, so we really push that mentality forward, right? We're about 200, 250 strong. We have a really big quality presence and quality mindset, and we like to embody and live this kind of mentality, right? This is a quote, I think, from the Jungle Book. For the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack, right? So that kind of makes you think about I as an individual contributed, but my entire team is really what makes our effort really strong. So that's what we are and what we do. But I'm going to stop with the sales pitch, right? I'm not a used car salesman. If you want to come to Detroit, come to Detroit. You know, if you're looking for a change, check out Amrock or anybody in the Dan Gilbert family of companies, Quick Loans, whatever. But if you're not, that's cool too, right? So I'll stop talking about that and talk about what's really important, right? Aviation, planes, cool planes, right? And this is what our story kind of starts at, right? What I'll tell you about is how we were able to embody the spirit of the fighter jet, right? And the spirit of Top Gun. And I really like that analogy, not only because I like the movie, but it brings to mind the idea of excellence and speed, right? And that's what our team was striving for, and how we were able to kind of transition from flying a biplane at 150 miles an hour to flying an F-14 Tomcat. That plane is no longer actually flying, so I'll call it like, I don't know, some other jet, some really fast jet that looks cool at 1,500 miles per hour, right? And that's kind of what we're going to talk about. And what I'm hoping is I give you guys some takeaways to bring back to your team, right, to benefit how your test automation and your quality mindset can evolve. So let's do a little bit of sharing. I imagine that the majority of folks here are testers. So any leaders or product managers? Okay, so we got a few leadership types. That's cool. Do we have any developers? Okay, all right. And then do we have any people who test on a day-to-day basis? Majority of us. All right, so to that crowd, do you write automated tests on a day-to-day basis? How many people do that? Okay. All right. How about writing automated tests, maybe, or tests to focus on regression? So features that already shipped, that's when you do write automation, that's what you're focused on, is writing automation for regression features. How many people do that? Okay. And then what about writing automation for features that are being currently rolled out before they hit production? Okay. So there's a mishmash of folks and how they use automation, right? So I'm going to tell you where we came from to kind of relate to that, right? So in 2014 is when we really started our test automation push. Our team at that point was about 20 QAs, so 20 testers. And overall, our tech team was growing. So to me, the analogy was like we were building our Air Force, right? We were expanding quickly. In 2014, the interest rates were really, really low because everything crashed, and so interest rates were low, which meant that we, as a company, got a lot of business because people in the States were refinancing their mortgages. So we were getting a whole crap ton of business, and we needed to grow our team very quickly. And so at that point, we were hiring developers, we were hiring QAs, we were hiring product managers, we were doing all this cool stuff. But we were doing a lot of this too, right? So this is a picture of a plane that's crashed from World War I. Notice the biplane, so we're still in biplane mode, right? We were trying to get really fast. We were growing, but we were having a lot of growing pains. Some of the growing pains focused around speed. Some of the growing pains focused around bugs in production. And so we were trying to figure out, at that time, how to just launch off the runway, still biplane mode, right? We're just trying to figure out what it would take for our team to take off safely. Right? We started to get together, and as a team, I remember going into a room and asking the team questions about what we're going to do. Right? We had these discussions pre-push to say, hey, are we ready to go? And I noticed that at that time, there was a symbol of our low maturity level for our team, because when we started asking questions about whether we're ready to go, people would say yes. And then me, in 2014, being a new, naive team member, I'd say, well, how do you know? And they'd say, well, I feel like I'm ready to go. I was like, what? How do you feel? You either know or you don't. I was like, what is your feeling based on? And I'm like, well, you know, we did some testing, and I wrote it in a Word document, all the test cases that I was going to execute, and some of these are executed. So clearly, we were having a problem. And what it really came down to is all these immature processes that we're following were pushing us into a direction where we were going really, really slowly. Right? We were trying to just build our team and get off the ground. But what we were encountering were folks that relied on manual testing exclusively, were folks that couldn't keep up with the amount of tests that were needed. And so that resulted in our team becoming a bottleneck. And that was a really scary situation, because we knew that our tech team as a whole would keep growing, our process would expand, right? The amount of features that we'd be requested to test would keep expanding and growing, and all that we were doing was slowing our team down. And so at that point, we started thinking about what we could do to prevent that from happening. We needed to figure that out soon at that point and figure out exactly what we were going to do. So at that point, test automation was still a relatively hot buzzword. Now, it's almost a matter of fact, right? Nowadays, when we talk about automated tests, it's just a thing that people do. But back in that day, it was a new thing, right? When I joined the company, I asked about our test automation, because in the interview, of course, we were writing automated tests, right? So when I was transitioning from my job at McAfee to the job at Amrock, I asked those questions. I said, well, do we write test automation? And people would say, oh yeah, of course we do. How many tests? Well, we run them, and that guy's in charge of it. I was like, okay, fine. So when I joined the company, I went and talked to him and said, hey, man, can you show me your scripts? And he was like, yeah, for sure. Come on over here, buddy. So he stopped me in front of his computer and pulled up QTP, right? Because that's what he was writing his tests in. And he was explaining to me the test flow. And that time, as he was looking me in the face, he kind of looked over and went, click. I was like, whoa, what did you just do there, right? And he was like, well, that's a little encouragement for my test. And I was like, whoa, so we're not really writing test automation, are we? And he said, well, we are, but it needs a bit of encouragement. I was like, well, so what happens at nighttime if I want to run these tests through an automated process? What happens then? He's like, well, that's not really how we do things around here. And I was like, oh, that's room for improvement. So that story, right, translated into this situation with the rest of our team where manual testing was the primary method of testing and test automation was not being developed at all, right, from my perspective. Some people would say that it was, but I don't think it was. And so what we decided at that time in 2014 is that we needed to come up with a vision and a mission to accelerate test automation. Right? We knew that we wanted to do it. It was a thing that was happening in the industry. There was a lot of people who were sold on it, but we wanted to figure out how to launch our efforts. And so we needed some sort of catalyst, right? And going back to those pictures of those two planes, right? There was a biplane and then there was a jet, right? We wanted to get to jet phase. We wanted to get into that fast flight mode. But even jets, right, have some sort of accelerant. So what you're looking at here is an Amrock-themed picture of a jet on an aircraft carrier. And does anybody know how a jet propels itself off the deck of a very short aircraft carrier? There's a thing called a catapult, right? And that's the accelerant. And that's what we decided we wanted to implement in order to accelerate our test automation efforts and change the mindset of our team. We needed a mission. And so this is what we came up with, right? Our mission was to change the mindset of our entire team to utilize automated testing as the primary method of testing. So notice I didn't say the exclusive method of testing, right? But I did say the primary method. We wanted to bring test automation to the forefront of everybody's brain at Amrock Technology, or at that time it was called TitleSource, and ensure that when they thought about testing, the first thing they did was think about automation. Right? There's, of course, room for exploratory testing and other forms of testing which are not automation. But in order to scale and in order to eliminate bottlenecks, we wanted to ensure that automation was the first thing they thought about. So I'm going to talk to you from here on out about how we've accomplished that mission. some of the things that we put into place that worked really well, and some of the things which kind of show results and how we thought we were successful. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is how we changed the mindset. Right? That was part of our mission, the first part of the 3 phases in our mission. A mindset is a set of beliefs that people have that are entrenched in their brain and in their being. Right? So it's a really kind of tricky thing to change, because once you establish a mindset, that becomes part of who you are. Right? So if you're a manual tester, or if you're an automation tester, you relate to those 2 things. And so to transition you from one train of thought to another, you need to have a lot of motivation to make that transition. In our company, we decided that this type of mindset shift needed to start with the largest group of people who were responsible for automation. And that was the group of pilots or testers, so people like yourselves. So the first thing that we did was to figure out what we could do to change their mindset. So we went and talked to them and had some discussions and came up with some initiatives to change their mindset. And so I thought I'd come up with a fun analogy of how we did this, right? So I want to introduce you guys to Commander Quinton. Commander Quinton is a leader, right? It could be a person who's a technical leader, a manager, right? A team lead, anybody who's really focused around the leadership of the quality effort. In the situation of our team, this was me, and whoa, my leash is getting shorter. It's because I'm wrapping myself. Look, just as a side note, I have a leash. First time. You guys don't trust me, do you? I'm going to walk too much. Anyway, so Commander Quinton. So Commander Quinton thought to himself in 2014, all I do is manual testing. I don't want to be a bottleneck, right? This was kind of my story. I came in, I just told you about how I came in to the company and saw a bunch of automated tests, right, that had room for improvement. And so I wanted to make a change, and I wanted to change that mindset, because I honestly, selfishly, all I wanted to do was write automated tests. In 2014, I thought that was the be-all and end-all, right? I was like, I love doing this stuff. It's super fun. It's challenging, right? And so this was kind of my go-to. I started making a lot of marketing material and causing a lot of noise. I made stickers, for testing all the things. I did all this stuff. But I also talked to my team members. And so these are the types of questions that I kind of asked, right? And Commander Quinton asked the same questions of his friends, right? So I want to introduce you to Manuel Testor, right? That's one character. Quail, last name Iddy. That's another person. And obviously, the famous Tester McTesterson, who we probably see all over our test data, at least in some of your companies. I know in my company, Tester McTesterson is a really famous person who has a lot of different orders that are open and runs a lot of stuff, right? But when Commander Quinton was talking to these people, or when I did, I met with some resistance, right? Of course there was resistance. Think about this perspective. As a tester, right, your whole job relies on the fact that you execute the test that you have and figure out any problems that might come up. What if I came to you and said, hey, that stuff that you do and how you do it, forget all that. I want you to try this other way, right? And so people had apprehensions, such as, what's in it for me, right? Why would I invest all this extra effort in order to gain what? What am I personally going to get from this automation initiative that you're asking me to undertake, right? I don't know how. I just simply don't have the skill set. I've never been taught how to code. Coding's hard. It's intimidating. It's not an easy thing to pick up, right? If you haven't had the experience before, why would I do that? And finally, this person is my least favorite response, right? I'm not going to say who it came from, but it's fine. We'll just get more people. I was like, oh yeah, we have a bottleneck. We'll just expand the bottleneck. That makes perfect sense, right? Yeah, I didn't think so either. So these are some of the things which Commander Quinton met as negatives from the folks that he was trying to convince of the mindset shift. So Commander Quinton went back to his office or to his command center or wherever he leads his troops from or whatever, and thought about answers to some of these fears that these folks had, right? So the first answer, right, for what's in it for me, transferable skills is what he came up with, or what I told my people, right? As a manual tester, you're really good if you know the domain that you're testing in. And that means that you have to be deeply invested in your product or the feature set that you're testing, which is great until you have to transition to a different team, or transition to a different company and start that whole process all over again. Now, I'm not negating the fact that as you figure out that product, you learn some skills, right? But I would argue that there are not as many transferable skills in manual testing as there would be in automated testing, right? To the person who said, I don't know how, I thought, we'll just teach you how. And that was quite a simple answer with a very complicated implementation that I'll talk to in a little while. But we promised our people that we're not going to throw them to the wolves and make them learn completely on their own. We'll provide them guidance and training to bring them up to a level that they could start at and be effective at. And finally, to the person who said, we'll just get more people, right? We talked about the fact that my company effectively operates at a high level when the interest rates were low. Well, we saw that interest rates are not going to stay low forever, and our volume is going to shrink. Therefore, we're going to get less money. Therefore, we're not going to be able to hire more people because we're not going to have as much money. Right? So it was just not a scalable answer. And that person, we just were like, yeah, that's fine, honey. Yeah, we'll definitely hire more people. And we kind of told them that that's not the case. And so we went back and talked to our folks. Right? We talked to the individuals and presented them with our rebuttals, as I would say. And most people were on board. Right? So this kind of paints a rosy picture. And there were some holdouts. There were people who were just like, no, this isn't for me. And we said, OK, that's fine. We'll see. Right? And we hatched a plan on what to do next. So Commander Quentin was really, really excited. He went to the base of the people who are actually implementing the work and doing the work and got the majority of them excited about this automation effort. And then he thought, well, who are the people who are actually kind of pulling the lines or the cords of the work that's being done, and who are the people who are actually figuring out where our testers fit in? And those would be the commanders or the leaders. And that's the people that Commander Quentin or myself needed to influence next. Right? So I was trying to change this mindset. It wasn't specifically just me. It was our team that was trying to transition to this mindset. And we had some other actors who were trying to change the mindset. And so we talked to the folks who are actually doing the work, but we wanted to also go to the top and talk to the people who were in charge of the folks that were doing the work to convince them. Because in that situation, you have backup both for your efforts and for the people who are going to be changing, who need to change their mindset, right? Who actually need to change their workflow. So let me introduce you to Captain Tanya. Obviously, Captain Tanya is of a lower rank than Commander Quentin because Commander Quentin is the testing commander. So there's that, and he's got medals and stuff, lots of experience, so that's cool. But Captain Tanya was very knowledgeable too, right? She was a really great team leader. And so when Commander Quentin started talking to Captain Tanya about the implementation, right, of this mindset change, one thing came to mind is that there's going to need to be a lot of time that's dedicated for our team members to transition from what they do now to how they're going to operate in a different manner, right? So we asked for 4 to 6 weeks of dedicated time for the team member to kind of move to an automated mindset, right? In that time, we're going to do some activities that I'll describe later, which would help the person move into the process. But obviously, Captain Tanya had some problems with that or had some hesitation. Imagine going to your team leader or your manager and saying, I'm going to withdraw myself from the team for 4 weeks completely. Like, what, are you taking a vacation? No. What are you going to be doing? Well, I'm going to be learning stuff. OK, why can't you learn on your own time? Well, I can, but this is better. Right? And that was kind of the discussion that was had. And some of the things that came to mind for Captain Tanya or our leaders at that time with respect to moving these testers out is, who will test? Right? My tester's gone. My software quality engineer or my software quality analyst has been removed. Who's gonna test? Another thing that our leaders were concerned about is, what is in it for my team? What do I get from it? Similarly to how individuals were saying, what am I going to get from this mindset shift? What is the team going to get from this mindset shift? You're withdrawing this person for 4 to 6 weeks. What is going to be the immediate impact when they come back? Right? We could talk about strategic impact. We could talk about strategic gain, long-term gain, all we want. But if there isn't an immediate impact, that strategic gain is really hard to realize and really hard to fathom when you're feeling immediate pain, like the team would if the tester was not present. Right? So The last thing that I wanted to mention from our leadership perspective is we live a culture of servant leadership, right? So our leaders at Amrock and Quicken Loans and any company in the Dan Gilbert family of companies is really trained to look out for our team members. As a team leader, their whole responsibility is to remove roadblocks for team members doing their work, right? And so because of that, Captain Tanya was really focused on the team member. And so she thought, there is going to be a little bit of pain. I'll figure it out. That's another one of our isms that we have at the company. But this seems to be really good for the team member. I have to keep that in mind. And so, again, Commander Quinton went back to his office, right? I went back and started thinking about the hesitations which team leaders had and came up with the rebuttals for the team leaders, right? Manual testing can be carried out by others while your team, or while the team member is away for 4 to 6 weeks, right? That is actually an opportunity. We have cross-functional teams. Do you guys operate on cross-functional teams, or are you mostly, who's on a team that's full of testers and you get work brought to you and you execute the work and give it back to developers or development teams? Okay, nobody. A few people. It's cool. What about cross-functional teams? So you operate with developers and BAs and all that stuff. That's kind of what we do, right? And so this was an opportunity for the rest of the team to be engaged in the quality mindset, right? We provided this opportunity to the team and said 4 to 6 weeks in the long term is not a long time. We'll position this absence of your team member at a time of low risk for you, and it'll give the opportunity for your business analyst to get more into the testing. We'll make sure that before this tester transitions off, he or she provides you with a plan of action of how to execute the tests that he or she has written in the past, right? So in a team leader's mind, it was a really good opportunity to spread quality to make it everybody's responsibility. So that was one of the things that we brought up, right? Your team's testing will speed up. That was the obvious answer, right? As you learn test automation, you produce automated tests and you eliminate manual tests, which means that you speed up in a fairly short time, right? And finally, it's the best move for the career of the QA, right? We kind of tugged at those heartstrings of the team leader and said, you want to be a great team leader, right? Like, you want your team members to succeed, right? Like, they're going to learn transferable skills. And that kind of also, kind of got at the team leader to buy into this mission. So yes, we went back and we talked to the team leaders just like we talked to the team members. And the team leaders were on board. They were actually surprisingly easier to get on board than I initially thought, right? Mainly because as soon as one team leader said yes to this, all the other ones wanted to kind of not be left behind in this brand new initiative that we were marketing to everybody. And so they said, yeah, sure, you can have my team member, right? We'll figure out how to perform the testing while this person's gone, but you have to give me something in return. I said, yep, that's fine. We'll give you something in return. So team leaders are on board, right? The team members were on board. And we performed this exercise mainly to excite and eliminate excuses, right? So in order for everybody to kind of start this mindset shift, we anticipated that people may not buy into it if they had any type of excuse in their mind that would prevent them from moving. And so that's what the whole purpose of talking to these folks at the tester level and at the team leader level was, right? To make sure that the groundwork was laid for them to buy into the mission. So we got really excited, right? The folks who were kind of rolling out this effort and trying to change the mindset had this vision, this mission that we were living, really pumped, right? We got buy-in for both the team members and the team leaders, the two sets of people who we anticipated that we needed to get excited in order to move forward. And then we realized that we actually had to do something about it. Up to this point, there was a lot of talk. Right, there's a lot of presentations. There's a lot of cool graphics that were shown. There was a lot of analogies. We did stuff like present in front of the whole team and put up posters from Warcraft 2. Did anybody play Warcraft 2? Right, we called our team Team Fortress, right, based on that video game. Right, so there was a whole bunch of analogies that we were implementing, but now we actually had to deliver. Right, and that was a scary, scary realization. It was like, holy shit, I need to do stuff. Right? It's like, I got to stop talking, got to start doing. So from here on out, I'll talk to you guys a little bit about what that meant, that implementation. right? What we did to roll this mindset into an implementation. And to kind of start, I want to bring your attention to this picture, right? What you're looking at is a flight simulator. And that's what we decided that we needed in order to implement our mindset shift, right? We talked about the fact that we wanted to shift into automation, but we didn't want to throw people to the wolves, right? We said we're going to give them training, and so that's what this became for us. A flight simulator is a really good analogy from my perspective, because as a pilot, when you're learning how to get into an airplane, how to fly an airplane, it gives you a safe space that simulates real-life situations. And that's what we did. We designed a 4 to 6 week program, which we called Top Gun, that taught people in a specific time frame with 100% focus on just that learning and a promise of delivering value. Right? So all those fears from the team leader and the team member, we brought into one bucket and said, aha, this training program will help us eliminate all these fears. Right? Because it was focused, the team members didn't have any distractions and could learn a lot of the hard stuff which you need to learn when you're starting the code. Right? It was essentially a boot camp that started with very simple coding examples, moved into object-oriented principles, and then moved into what that means for testing. Right? We focused on UI testing specifically because we wanted the mindset of the tester to be able to be easily translated into an automated flow. And we thought that UI automation best suits that sort of purpose. And the value that we produced for the team member was obviously the skill that he or she would pick up from the training. But for the team leader, it was actual tests, right? Actual automated tests, which were a result of one of the things that we did inside of our training. So from here on, I'll give you some lessons that we learned through about 4 iterations of Top Gun that really made it successful, right? The first iteration was a little less successful than the 4th one, so there's a progression. And these lessons are all about what we did as Top Gun iterated to make it better. The first thing I want to kind of point out is the existence of a course outline. Right? So if you've taken a university course of any type or a college course, or I can't remember if I had course outlines in high school. It's a long time ago. I don't know. Maybe, whatever. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so the course outline was really important to us because it set the expectations, right, for the training. So the schedule, the desired learning outcomes and organization of the training. Right? So when me as a tester were introduced to Top Gun, I was given a document that showed exactly what the training was going to be. Right? From expectations of hardware and software to day-to-day schedule, right? Which really allowed our people to understand what they were learning, when they were learning, and also it outlined learning objectives and how you're supposed to progress. Right? And that's the next thing that I want to kind of point out. Existence of learning objectives. So at the beginning of the program, we didn't really specify them very well. Right? And that left some room for ambiguity as to how you, as a participant in the program, knew how you were progressing. Right? So a learning objective gives a predetermined expectation of what you should know at what time. So in the course outline, we were able to say, by this week, you should have these learning objectives completed. By this week, you should have these learning objectives completed. And that allowed us to do 2 things. Number 1, provide awareness to the student or to the top gunner of what they should know. And number 2, it allowed us to test that learning objective. So if we laid it out well in advance, we were able to design quizzes to show how those people were doing. Right? And the quiz was not meant to discourage. It was not meant to cause stress to the people participating. It simply was meant to show them how they were progressing. Right? So that quiz was written off. If you did poorly, it didn't matter. Right? You knew what you had to make up. And that's how it was staged. That's how it was delivered. So that's one thing. Some physical organization. How many of you guys work on remotely distributed teams? Okay. We have some of those too. But for this training program, we insisted that the majority of our top gunners were extracted from the regular day-to-day team and brought into a specific learning area. So at the beginning of the Top Gun program, we had 100% on-site participants. right? And we put them into a classroom setting. It was actually just a different floor in our building. But what that allowed us to do is to say all that you're focusing on day in and day out for 4 to 6 weeks is test automation learning, right? Don't worry about anything else, right? We talked to the team leaders and said, leave these people alone, please. They're learning hard stuff. They really need to focus on practicing what they're doing. So that was one of the really key moments that when we realized that these people need to be co-located as much as possible. Having said that, in the 3rd and 4th iterations of our Top Gun training, we got requests from other companies within our family of companies for testers to participate in the training. And there was a catch. I was like, yeah, cool, our mission's spreading. Everybody's hearing about Top Gun. This is great. Like, we had stickers and everything made up. Like, you know, if somebody from whatever the studio that produced Top Gun looked at our stuff, they'd probably sue us because there's a bunch of rip-offs of, you know, things and logos. But anyway, the news was spreading. And so people wanted to bring, leaders wanted to bring their testers into our program, except they were based in California and in Florida. And so as these requests were coming in, I was like, well, this kind of breaks this rule. So what are we going to do to enable these folks who are on the phone to participate as much as the folks who are present in person? And so what we ended up doing is committing to the same medium of communication for everyone, right? So everybody, because the folks who are on the in remote sites could dial in, everybody dialed in, right? Whether it was for theory classes or quizzes or exercises or group projects, we forced everyone, we gave them headsets, we gave them like dial-ins and stuff like that, and even we used a software which allowed virtual classrooms, which was really cool. And so we were able to split them into teams and put them into their own virtual classrooms. And that single method of communication made sure that the folks who were not present on site were first-class citizens, just like everybody else, right? So that was a really key takeaway. Oops, leash. If you guys see this moving, just point this out, please. Another thing that we did was implement an individual project, kind of a capstone project. Right? So we talked about the fact that when we designed this training, it would deliver value to the team. And this is how it did that. Right? So the individual project ensured that our folks were ready for the real world. How? By designing and implementing real test scenarios in the automation that we've taught them. So we taught C# automation through coded UI and a little bit of Selenium. And we focused on desktop projects and some web applications. And what we would do at the beginning of the project is we would figure out what area of our company needed the most help from a test automation perspective. So what teams didn't actually have test automation or had a low number of test cases. And we'd go to those team leaders and those project managers and ask them for features to automate, and then distribute them amongst our top gunners through these individual projects at the end of the 4-week period. So weeks 1 through 4, you'd be progressing through these learnings, through exercises, through group projects, and then at the end of the 4th week, we would say, okay, here's your individual project, this is your capstone project, and in order to become a certified Top Gunner, you have to show that you can deliver test cases in a real-world environment, so in a constricted time frame to simulate real-world pressure to our team. And that was a determinant of course success. There were folks who weren't able to do this, right? Because not everybody is meant to be a test automation engineer, which is fine. Or some folks maybe it just didn't click immediately. And so for those folks, what we would do is deem them as trained Top Gunners as opposed to certified Top Gunners. So certified Top Gunners would get a little plaque with aviators and a little name with a call sign, right? Mine was Iceman, and everybody else had one that was made up, which was really fun too. The whole program, there's a lot of fun things that we did, you know, to excite people about it. But as a certified Top Gunner, you get this plaque. As a trained Top Gunner, you get a report and say, these are the things that we want you to work on. And if you're able to work on those skills that you didn't do in the program, you still had an opportunity to get your plaque. Because when I ordered the plaques at the beginning of the program, I had no idea who would be successful or not, so I ordered them for everybody anyway. And then, you know, now it just so happens that I have like 6 or 8 or 10 plaques just scattered around with people who left the company. So that's kind of something that I don't share with my management because they think I waste money already, and that's neither here nor there. But that's kind of what the project was all about. One thing which we learned late on in the effort was the fact that we had a learning and development team, right? Mind blown. All of a sudden, we, the folks who were implementing a training program, could go to the learning and development team and learn about how to implement a training program, which was awesome because those folks were the ones that taught us about learning objectives, and those folks were the ones that taught us about how to make proper course outlines, what words to use and not to use, right? So from my perspective, that was something that was really key to make the latter iterations of Top Gun really awesome and really well focused on individual learning. I'm not a teacher, right? I have some sailing instruction background, right? I was in Sea Cadets and learned some instructional technique, but by no means do I know how to deliver training to individuals. But these folks do, right? So my takeaway from that was if you have folks like that in your organization, use them. Don't try and do everything yourself. Implement their learnings and ask them questions. So after all those lessons were learned, right, we were in this mode, right? So flying high, shooting things, and launching missiles, and attacking this mindset that we wanted to obliterate and turn into automation, doing really great things. We were super happy, right? All of our folks, we had 20 manual testers, exclusively manual testers, have transitioned. 18 of them were transitioned over to automation, writing test scripts every single day. We were seeing growth patterns for our automated tests. Everything was hunky-dory. Unfortunately, that was not the case, right? So we delivered Top Gun. We changed the mindset of the testers, but we were still seeing that the entire team was not bought in, right? The testers who were doing manual testing were now exclusively doing automation, but nobody else gave a crap, right? The rest of the team was not engaged, and our mission was to change the mindset of the entire team, the business analysts, the developers, even the architects we wanted to influence, and kind of infiltrate their mindset to ensure that quality was a first-class citizen and that automation was the first thing that came to mind, right? When they thought of testing, they thought of automation. So from here on out, I'll tell you what we did and what lessons we learned to infiltrate their mindset and figure out what made them tick. All right, so we figured that we had the testers on board. They went through Top Gun. They were really engaged in automation. But the folks who maybe did not participate in the program still needed to be won over, right? We needed to win the hearts and minds, as to stick with military aviation and military theming. We needed them to really be bought in. And so here are a series of things that we did to help them along and to give them a space to get excited about automation. The first thing was the creation of a community. Go figure, right? How long has the KWSQA community been around? I read somewhere, I spoke at, 2 years ago, I spoke at the conference, and I remember reading, I don't remember whether it was America, like North America or in the world, but it was one of the longest running communities in North America, the quality communities. It makes sense, right? Research in Motion's been around a long time. This all kind of how it came together in my head, like, well, there are testers, let's get together, let's talk, right? But we took that concept and we brought it to our team and said, okay, let's form a quality community and open it up to everybody. So we had a schedule that we designed, right, that was inclusive of all roles, devs, business analysts, project managers, leaders, and we invited the whole team to come and discuss quality with us, right? We had talks that were kind of cross-functional. So we had talks, for example, on unit testing, right? So we brought in unit testing experts and invited the developers, and that was something that they were really interested in, right? We had soft skill presentations for business analysts, right? We talked about things like testing for the problem, not the solution, right? Which revolves around the fact that perhaps what we're building is not actually going to solve the problem of the user, right? So we had all types of talks that would focus, that would invite other team members that were not traditional testers to come and learn about quality. We also established a standard for technical excellence, right? So we were at a point in 2014 where we brought folks in for interviews and we hired people who maybe did not have the same level of automated experience that we did, with the assumption that we're going to be training them. Because we were running Top Gun. The assumption was, this person's a great culture fit, they have testing experience, They might need to brush up on their automation skills, but it's fine. We'll just run them through Top Gun. And that was that. Well, after the cessation of Top Gun, when we finished training all of our existing team members, we said, no, we're going to look for folks who are as technical as we are and no less, because we know that we don't want to dilute the standard that we just worked so hard to bring our team members to. So we committed to that, and it was hard because a lot of folks would come through, and it was easy to maybe hire folks who didn't have that standard, right, with the understanding that maybe we'll train them, but we really established that standard and really stuck to the fact that we don't want to bring those folks on board. We only want folks who have experience in technical automation in order to not bring them in and set them into a situation where they wouldn't have the proper support because we weren't running Top Gun, and also dilute our technical abilities. We hosted team events that were focused around quality, right? So again, for the inclusion of the entire team, we had an event that we called the Testathon, right? It was focused on introducing more automated tests into our infrastructure and into our runs. And we included the entire team. We had some small demos and some small learning sessions on how to write specific types of tests. We focused mainly on unit tests, right? So we helped all types of different roles to learn how to write simple unit tests, and then we unleashed them and said, we're going to put you into teams. This is a competition. Whichever team wins gets, it was something, the equivalent of, I think, $1,000 split between all the team members as a prize. Everybody else got lunch, got like cool perks and stuff like that. It was in a fun little session in downtown Detroit, at a building that wasn't ours, and we coordinated that type of event, again, to share the mindset, right? It was a bit of a marketing effort. We realized after that the quality of tests that were written weren't exactly up to our standards, so we had to smoke a lot of them back out. But this sort of effort perpetuated that mindset of automation and what it meant to test. Right? If you're a team member who's never tested before, and the first introduction you have to actually getting hands on keyboard is through automation, then the next time you go back to writing tests, you're going to think to yourself, well, OK, now I need to write a test. I should probably figure out how to write an automated test. So that was some of the things that we did. The last thing that I want to kind of mention to you guys is in the scope of promotions. So we went to our leadership team and said, we're on this mission, right? We want to push automation forward. And so we want to ensure that as you progress as a quality engineer, as you progress through your life cycle at the company, you demonstrate the skill. So as a junior, right, we expect that you're maybe writing tests and you're asking questions of how to write effective tests. As you move into the intermediate role, it should be a little bit more hands-off. As you move into the senior role, you should be sharing the knowledge. So we designed a specific pattern that was adhered to through job requirements for our testers to progress and share the knowledge and share the mindset. So that was a really key thing, because that motivated people who may not be internally motivated, but through promotion, that was kind of a standard for the promotion, so they were a little bit more externally motivated. So that was something that we were able to work with our leadership and sell them on and ingrain in the job requirements. So those were some of the things that we did, right, to push that mindset forward. The biggest thing I would say is definitely the training. Right? After the training, there was the idea of influencing other folks, and we had some success. Right? So I won't lie to you, there still are problems. Right? This is a perfect world that we live in. Test automation is definitely on the forefront of our team's mindset, but there are still problems that we encounter day to day. But what were some of the specific outcomes that we saw? So the first thing I want to share with you is something a little bit about the testing pyramid, right? The test automation pyramid. Have you guys seen this before? Has anybody not seen? Yeah, OK, how many people are aware of the origin and the testing pyramid? Yeah, most of us, I would say. So the big win that we had from this was the balance of the testing pyramid. So when we started Top Gun, we understood that the majority of our tests that we will be producing were UI tests. And I think it's fair to say that UI tests are a little bit burdensome, right? There are UI tests that are very valuable, but it's very easy to write UI tests that are very invaluable and taxing in terms of maintenance, right? So when we wrote these tests in Top Gun, we understood that we might put ourselves into a little bit of a hole, but the idea was that as people grow in their technical abilities, they'll be able to move into the latter, harder stages of the testing pyramid, the more technical stages, right? And that's exactly what we started seeing last year and this year. So when we were initially rolling out Top Gun, our testing pyramid was completely inverted, right? There was a very few unit tests that were in existence. They weren't run in a CI perspective. They weren't running in continuous integration. Integration tests didn't really exist. There were maybe 100 or so that were in existence, but were not, again, being run in a continuous integration mode, right? And currently, what we're seeing is that we're actually working hard to peel out the UI test. So we sit in a situation right now where we have a very well-balanced testing pyramid. I could tell you the numbers, but it's not about the numbers, because I can tell you that I have 15,000 tests, which I may or may not, but what does that mean to you? And do numbers of tests really equate to value produced by test automation? I would argue no, but the balance of the testing pyramid does, right? To me, that's the most important thing. I think that's what we've strived for, and that's what we've accomplished. The biggest base of our tests right now, for sure, are the unit tests. The intermediate are the integration tests, and the UI tests we're shrinking day to day. Right? I mentioned to you guys we were using Selenium. We were teaching Selenium and coded UI for our desktop product, and right now we're really transitioning into a world where we use visual testing to validate the UI layer, and that's something that's really exciting. But the biggest win to me is that the team members actually did this themselves. Right? We set goals for them 2 years ago. We set a goal to match the number of UI tests, or I'm sorry, match the number of integration tests to UI tests, right? So we started with UI tests, and then we said, okay, now let's, for this year, focus to match the number of UI tests to the number of integration tests as a Kickstarter for the integration testing effort. We accomplished that goal, and so by that method, we were able to keep scaling the number of integration tests on a day-to-day basis. So that was really interesting. So big win there, balance in the testing pyramid. I think the thing I'm proudest of from a whole team perspective, and a mindset shift perspective is this slide. Right? So we're looking at percentages of contributions to test automation. So what I did is I went to our source where all of our test automation is checked in, and looked at the history to see who was contributing and then matched them up to their job role. And I saw that about a third were QAs, which did not surprise me. But what did surprise me is the other 2/3 were not QAs. Right? So this, to me, is the example of the mindset shift. This whole mission that we were on the entire time, right, to change the mindset of the entire team, is being realized. And that's something that I attribute to the fact that we put in the time and effort into the Top Gun effort and into sharing the mindset with everybody else, and now we're seeing wins from. Right? So this is really cross-functional testing. Right? We have contributions from QAs, like I mentioned, a lot of contributions from devs, which is, again, not super surprising, because the tests that we write are written in the same language that we develop our products in. So it's easy for our devs to just jump in and help with testing. And finally, the thing that did surprise me is business analysts are checking in. Who would have thunk it? Business analysts, right? Folks who are not traditionally technical are becoming interested in test automation. Why? Well, number one, we all know that it's fun, right? It's a thing that you do that makes you feel good. You see a green check mark, you're like, nailed it. Well, at least, I don't know, I do that. Maybe you guys don't, but I get really excited about it. And I'm excited about learning. And the types of folks that we have on the majority of our teams are also excited about learning. And as you learn about test automation, you get those wins, and you pump up your own ego. And as you win by writing more test automation, everybody wins, because the team wins and you win. Right? So we've seen some ancillary kind of processes and results from this type of mindset, this cross-team mindset. We've seen business analysts, right? This is an indication of the fact that our business analysts, some of them, who were interested but never had the courage to kind of step out and write automation and write code, have been transitioning roles through being initiated into test automation from business analyst to more of a tester-focused QA role, and then into developers. Right? So that's a great pipeline that we're building to push the technicality of our entire team, and at the same time, attach a quality mindset. Because what actually happens, imagine this, you're a business analyst, right? You're a business analyst, you want to learn how to code. Why? Because the majority of the people around you, all your friends are coding, peer pressure, right? So you're like, okay, cool, I'm gonna do something. Let's just get a small green check mark. Yep, wow, this is really fun. Maybe I should do more. Okay, what's the next step? Wow, I could write more tests. This is great. So I keep writing more tests. I get to a point where I start getting bored with tests because I'm a really smart dude or girl. Then I look to the dev environment. Like, oh, well, I know I have confidence now. I know what object-oriented programming is. I've opened up Visual Studio and it didn't crash my computer. This is great. Let's move. and I keep moving forward towards the dev environment. And then finally, I build up enough courage, because I've written tests, and those are code, right? I've built up enough courage to go to my team leader and say, hey, I want to transition to a dev role. And the team leader says, yes, win for me, because I'm growing somebody. So I'm a good team leader, right? And you move into the dev role, but what happens? That quality mindset that you practiced and you built by writing test moves right along with you. So the next time there's a failure in a unit test, what do? You say, I know how to fix that. I've done that before. Let me do that. And all of a sudden, we have this awesome situation where everybody's involved in quality. And that's what this sort of indication shows that we're progressing towards. I think the efforts that we've seen kind of focus around this mindset shifting. The final win that we had was the growth of the automation in general, right? This, again, numbers don't matter, but it was 20,000%, right? That's a huge number, right? Again, test numbers, you could pay attention to, you may not pay attention to, they may matter, because tests at the end, are the value that a test produces may not be equatable to the number of tests that there are. But the fact that there was a growth pattern from 2014 to the current day, and it keeps skyrocketing, was really awesome. So let's go back to 2014, right? We talked about how my team was growing, right? We talked about how we were getting lots of business and we needed more people. We talked about how we didn't want a bottleneck, right? And so our team has actually tripled in size, right? We have 3 times as many team members, approximately, as we did in 2014. And our team has shifted its mindset. And what has that done for us? We've exploded like an atom bomb. We just mushroomed, really big. We eliminated our bottleneck, right? We saw the future and said, we can't be in a situation where as QAs, as testers, we're the ones that people rely on to, or we're the ones that are slowing the team down, right? So we implemented this mindset shift, we involved everybody, and we got to a point where we thought that this mission was accomplished, right? Change the mindset of our entire team to think of test automation as the primary method of testing. So that's it, right? I showed you all the graphs. I talked about the 20,000% growth. It's all over. It's good, right? My job is done. Well, not exactly, right? There are still things that we do day to day to keep shifting this mindset forward. There are things which we need to maintain. It's constant work, right? The struggle never stops. The hustle never quits, right? Quality is always a thing that we perpetuate, and quality and automation are the things that we always market. But now we have this awesome base of people who participated in this training effort, right? And we're part of these classes that are really bought into it. So what's your mission, right? This is getting towards the end of my rant here. But think about it from your own perspective, right? Are you in need of technical skill, right? Do you need people to help with trainings, right? Are you the person who trains people? Well, maybe you're not. Maybe your team's already of a very high technical skill. Do they write tests? You need to get them involved, right? And I would argue that it's your mission to perform the same thing that we kind of thought about too, right? Changing the mindset of your entire team to think of test automation as the first thing when it comes to testing eliminates bottlenecks, right? You don't want to be that bottleneck. So at the end of the day, I think it's safe to say that we were able to at least get up into the air and become this awesome airplane, right? Through all these initiatives that I mentioned, through the training, through the lessons that we learned, through all the work and blood, sweat, and tears that we put in, we got to this stage. We're now in a position where our entire team is focused on quality, right? We're getting into more advanced quality initiatives such as test-driven development, and our QAs are pushing that forward. So we had a really good go. I hope I gave you some points and tips about what to do or what not to do from our experience. I'm not selling you anything. I'm not a used car salesman. You don't have to look up postings, in Detroit if you don't want to. But I will say that 35% on the American dollar and the Canadian dollar is a really nice perk. But whatever, just saying. But thanks for your time. I'll take some questions.